and know that you have a full and active partner in the tribe.
All right, thank you, Eric. Supervisor Benoit, followed by Supervisor Stone.
Yeah, thank you very much, all of you, for your presentation. I'll take just a couple minutes on if you want to sit down. Just to kind of highlight a couple issues. It was, you know, shortly after I took the role as supervisor, the I-10 crash occurred where the truck blocked the, you couldn't have a finer place to lay a semi and have it spill its entire load, but across that little narrow bridge where there's a tiny shoulder on either side, and it blocked everything. And then that was proceeded, or followed 2 years later on by February 12th. It was described as a debacle. I think that was accurate, caused by a delay in getting the cement and a full day of closure that was unnecessary, but it happened. After each of those meetings, we had a follow-up with multiple folks. I'm really appreciative of Commander Greg Peck being here today. The second meeting, he was the commander of the office. The first one, I believe, was before his time there in the Banning office or San Antonio Pass office. But in each case, we took some actions, and it was interesting that yesterday I was doing an interview on this report, and the theme was kind of like, we have these actions and nothing happens. Well, things did happen. We had, after the first meeting, we were able to persuade everybody to install the openings in the center divider, which I believe 2 are there today, 3 more are planned, and then they'll eventually all be gated as opposed to the movable jersey barriers. As an idea I suggested, the CHP is a little reluctant to do it, but I think that in the long run it's another tool in the toolbox that may or may not be used. It won't be used every time, no matter where the accident happens and how useful they are, and maybe they just use them to turn vehicles with critical patients around and get them going in the other direction and get them off the road. But there is an option there. The new highways that we're talking about here, a large expense, a good addition to the toolbox. They will not solve the problem. And I just want to clarify the expectations a little bit. I think this is a great plan. It's going to move us in the direction of a coordinated effort. It will keep it front and foremost in the minds of people involved at all levels, and we will get it done as a result of this plan. But the 2002 incident is instructive in that it took place in the downtown area of Banning. You could get off and use the streets of Banning to get around the incident, and they were. Traffic was backed up as much as you could take off the interstate onto those roads, and it was flowing all day through the city of Banning. It's still backed up to Palm Springs. The other alternatives that we're seeing here today in the way of highways will also require a couple of 90-degree turns, somewhat limited weight carrying capability. You cannot run a fire hose through a straw. And 100,000 vehicles a day is a roadway that will not be accommodated by a 2-lane alternative road. It's important we proceed, have those alternatives for emergency situations, try and move traffic, use all the toolboxes. But I think out of the second meeting, one of the more interesting developments was the hospitality industry's presence and willingness to help us get the word out, and the addition of focus on changeable message signs, use of the internet and smartphones to get the word out to folks that there's something going on up ahead. I was at the event that was going on at the Sunnylands on the 12th of February this year. I got a call from my wife. She says, I'm stuck in traffic and I don't think I'm going to make the play down in Orange County. She did not, nor did any of her friends. What's going on? I called Ray Wolf, my good friend and predecessor at Caltrans. He had not heard what was going on. He had not yet heard about it. He found out very quickly and started a lot of reactions. But the bottom line was we were stuck with traffic for a long, long time. And as I told him at that time, you've got a half a dozen people here who call themselves ambassador, you've got a couple of senators, you've got a whole bunch of Congress members, and a whole lot of just plain folks who want to get back to LA after the ceremony, and you're going to hear from all of them, and that's exactly what happened that day. We just don't need to have that kind of problem. But the answer was not necessarily to the diversions, but to give the word to everybody. There's a huge problem there. You're going to have a hard time getting through the pass. Despite all our best efforts, it's going to be very slow or long-term commute today. Think about alternative plans. Think about spending the night, having dinner, going around a different route, 74, 371, Old Woman Springs Road. Any of those would have been quicker than the time that most of those people sat on the freeway that day. So I think that the changeable message sign, the involvement of the hospitality industry, getting the word to the concierge, getting the word out on the internet, all of that is equally important. But we should proceed to try and provide all the alternatives that we can reasonably provide, because this is a major thoroughfare confined to a very narrow pass that is going to forever present these kinds of problems in an array of different places and times that we can't even imagine, but we know will all be problematic. So as many tools as we can provide to notify the public of the problem, and to the extent we can help move traffic through the area, we should do that. So I applaud everybody involved, and say with the presentation of this proposal today and the continuing effort to plan this, we will continue to demonstrate that we care and try to make these events fewer and less impactful in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Benoit. Supervisor Stone.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. In the past 8 years that I've been on this board, we have seen this debacle arise on more than one occasion. I remember 6.5 years ago, the urgency of people being stranded on the I-10 for many, many hours. And this is just not a transportation convenience issue. This is really a health and safety issue, because we know the temperatures in the Coachella Valley get well above 100, and you've got people sitting idle with their cars on with a finite amount of gas, a finite amount of water or fluids, and people are at risk in this very, very dangerous trap on the I-10 freeway. And I appreciate all the agencies that have come together. I remember Dr. Wolf coming at the last major debacle and explaining that Caltrans took a lot of responsibility for the inability to clear the road fast enough and coordinate the efforts to get traffic moving again. And so if it hasn't been done already, I think we need to have a contingency plan for each segment of the I-10 freeway, from the Badlands all the way to the Coachella Valley. We need to look at every segment. And I think Supervisor Benoit is right. I think we need to have these openings within the K-rail. Every mile, every couple miles if necessary, even if it's a gate that will allow a CHP to open this gate and to effectuate the movement of people and or traffic, especially during these very, very hot times. I would even suggest that as we look at this contingency plan, and I think our Director of Transportation should be a part of that, Caltrans Director should be a part of that, CHP should be a part of that as we examine each segment. And there are going to be some areas that are very, very challengeable that are not going to allow us to have bypass roads. Going through the Badlands is going to be a challenge unless you got 500 helicopters willing to go up and down and pick people up. So I'm wondering if we should not have a safety contingency plan include, and we have time to plan this before the hot season comes upon us again starting next May or June, that periodically along the 10 freeway that we have storage containers that may be run by the county. Of course, we'd have to get Caltrans right away for some type of an encroachment permit, I presume, that would have emergency supplies of water and folding shade structures, chairs, in the event that there are areas where there is a major accident that is going to tie traffic up for many hours, to ensure that we are going to protect the citizens that have nowhere to go from the potential heat and dehydration and possible death. If we do not have the appropriate intervention, we may not have the ability to get our public safety officials, our ambulances, our paramedics to a middle of a traffic backup that backs up for miles if somebody is having heat stroke. And so I think this would be a very small investment. You can get these containers that we can lease that typically take product from the ports to the eastern seaboard, place them every couple miles along the 10 freeway, and store the appropriate supplies, including first aid supplies, in the event that we can't get people off the road within that particular segment and prevent a terrible tragedy becoming even a worse one yet. So I would certainly encourage our staff to come up with a plan, call it a contingency plan. It should be, you need to divide up the I-10 freeway into workable segments. Some will have appropriate bypasses that will be very effective in getting people off, and having some of these emergency supplies. I would be very supportive of any efforts to bring some of these ideas to fruition. And then lastly, if there was ever a need to fast track a project, this is one of them. We need to fast track these bypass roads. Caltrans, we need your cooperation to marshal these plans through. Appreciate the funding from the tribes. They recognize the public safety aspects of this. And I pledge on behalf of the county, and I'm sure my colleagues, that we will work cooperatively with you to ensure that we're not back here a year from now, wondering, how we could have done it better, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. There's going to be another accident on the I-10 freeway, and if it happens in the middle of summer, we're looking at potential health and safety problems for innocent people driving through our county.
All right, Supervisor Buster.
Well, good work, and maybe it was mentioned, but I think I didn't hear it. But this is not only to alleviate the half day's delay or even days delay from accidents, but this is where the earthquake is going to be centered, and I think we have the numbers you see of this Richter scale that can happen. You're going to have massive disconnects, upheavals, shattering of right-of-ways, pipelines, all throughout this area, so that the more options you have, and the quicker you are to being able to repair them, and to get emergency equipment through the area, and to commandeer. You may have to commandeer railroad rights away as well in a major earthquake event. So having these options and having the planning and having some resources there is going to be a critical thing, much more important than just for the periodic closure of the freeway through a truck accident and so forth. So you can't overemphasize that there are only a few gateways into Southern California, and crippling, interrupting any of those is going to have a crippling effect on all of us. So this is work that really should be rewarded with incentives, federal incentives, state incentives, and should be duplicated on other key corridors into the Southern California basin.
Excuse me, Supervisor Ashley. Thank you. I think those are all great ideas, and I think the motion, which I'd like to make now, I think covers most of that. But I think we also ought to take this Interstate 10 Lifeline Emergency Action Plan and take the following suggestions, like Supervisor Stone, extend that down Highway 60 to Moreno Valley through the Badlands as well, include that as well. And that's going to be helped tremendously, because right now plans are being drawn and the construction is scheduled to go underway to go 2 truck lanes, one on each side through the Badlands, starting in 2014. So that gives an opportunity to do some planning that'll fit right into this. And also the suggestion to include also allow for the earthquake potential area, not just an accident, but the earthquake potential. It's the same thing. That's just an accident caused by nature. Boom, there it is. Everything stopped. Same thing. So if it please you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move approval of the Interstate 10 Lifeline Emergency Action Plan with endorsing the I-10 Lifeline Plan with the changes that we've extended through the Badlands or Highway 60 and allow for the earthquake potential. Authorize the Director of Transportation Land Management to approve a memorandum of understanding with all participating agencies that substantially conforms with the attached version. And direct the Transportation Department and the Fire Department, Office of Emergency Services, and all other county departments to work cooperatively with other agencies to implement the Lifeline Plan and developing a joint protocol for emergency response.
And I'd like to, if I could, I'd just like to second that. And one thing I would add is that as I read the Form 11, it talks about the stakeholders and participants in this MOU will agree to meet regularly. I would think that we maybe want to specify a minimum of twice a year as a goal on that, if that's reasonable. So
Can't get this group together, twice a year that's named here just to go over where we are?
Exactly right, and to incorporate some of the fine suggestions from Supervisor Stone in those meetings. So I would make that one modification to the motion.
I think the motion covered that, but if it didn't, I included it. Okay, that's
Excuse
my
me.
comments.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second. Item 3.56, I'll just add a thank you to the entire team effort. Caltrans, County Transportation, CHP, great work. Thank you. Motion and a second. Motion is unanimous. All right, item 3.57, Supervisor Benoit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Changing directions completely, I'd like to have a discussion about Proposition 37. I'm mindful of the comments made earlier, but I think Proposition 37 is a whole stretch beyond some of the issues that were mentioned in our previous discussion. Proposition 37 is a mandate for labeling certain foods that are under the heading generically engineered. I think that the voters of the state are going to be pretty unaware of what that term means, and as a result we'll see some confusion in response to this. I would suggest to you that you've probably never eaten a tomato that has not been genetically engineered at some point in its life. Today's products are much better because we've figured out ways to improve them. And it doesn't necessarily make it a bad tomato or anything else that's been grown or in some cases processed. But what this proposition would do is mandate labeling of certain, quote, genetically engineered food products. And then the real rub of this is that it then leaves it to the public to enforce the regulation. It allows for private causes of action against people who violate the initiative's statutes. That really bothers me about a proposition of this type. The Press Enterprise wrote that Prop 37 is the wrong approach to addressing the merits or dangers of genetically engineered food. Whatever is its intent, this badly written, logically muddled initiative stands to do more mischief than good. And the San Bernardino Sun picks up on that theme and says the most concerning aspect of Prop 37 is its method of enforcement. It allows every member of the public to become an enforcer, dropping lawsuits if they only suspect noncompliance, but even if they have no evidence. What a nightmare scenario for grocers, small and large, who under the terms of this initiative would be required to keep reams of additional paperwork certifying that all the food they sell is properly labeled as to which might contain genetically modified organisms or not. The cost of this will be borne by people buying groceries eventually. It is certainly something that I'm concerned about from the perspective as a purchaser and having a lot of constituents who purchase groceries, most of us do. Driving up the cost for a special interest developed initiative that has not been vetted through any kind of a give and take process, but it's just basically the product of a group that wrote this and decided that they could pay the funds to get it on enough signatures to get it on the ballot. I got to tell you that my farming interests in the Coachella Valley, a multi-billion-dollar industry in Riverside County, critical to the well-being of our county economy, are not pleased and are scared to death of the impact of this kind of initiative. So I think this bears serious consideration, and it's also one that, unless you've heard this someplace, it doesn't rise to the top. It's in the cacophony of the election. People look for people that might know a little bit about what's going on, and what's that one about? I think Proposition 37 deserves some notice, and I'm going to propose that we give it some notice and recommend a no on Proposition 37.
I'll second your motion. More discussion.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve item 3.57. Please vote.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, just a couple of quick comments. First of all, I want to applaud Supervisor Benoit for bringing this forward. Another job killer bill in the state of California. I don't know if any of you have looked at food or soft drinks and looked at the labels. But I mean, you go into a restaurant today, they're going to tell you exactly how many calories your tomato soup has, how many your bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich has. On a soda can, they got to have all the ingredients: carbonated water, caramel, color, aspartame, phosphoric acids, potassium benzoate to protect taste. They tell you natural flavors. They don't give you the secret formula for Coke, but we'd all be millionaires if we had that. Candidate authority, the Coca-Cola company, calories 0, which I'm very happy about. Total sodium 40 milligrams. I mean, we have so much information on these cans. Sometimes if you want to read the description of Cool Whip, you'd probably be scared to death to ever eat the stuff if you found out what it was made of. But the bottom line is that we have enough warnings on our foods. It tells you about the caloric content, it tells you about how much fat, the good fats, the bad fats. We have a tremendous agricultural business, not only in the Coachella Valley, but we've got a thriving wine country that is growing and is going to be exporting wines both nationally and internationally. The Farm Bureau opposes this for obvious reasons. It's going to make us uncompetitive as we ship a lot of our produce. I was talking to our former state senator who has orange groves in the Hammond Valley that ships a lot of his product to Japan. You know, if we impose more labeling restrictions and drive his costs up, then he may not be able to compete with South America that he's competing with. So this is a job killer bill. We don't need more regulations on top of regulations. We need less regulations to keep our businesses competitive on the global workforce. And lastly, again, in this very challenging economy, why would we embrace a proposition that is going to raise the prices of food for our citizens that are struggling to keep food on their tables? So, Supervisor Benoit, thank you for bringing this forward. I'll heartily support your motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Item 3.57. Please vote.
Did you mean to abstain, Supervisor Buster? Did you want to abstain? Okay. All right, now we're going on to items, actually that concludes our policy calendar. We'll go on to our successor agency and redevelopment agency meetings, items 4.1 and 4.2, and I'm going to approve of the second.